Hey y'all, thanks for joining for the Managed States Kickoff for 13.4, releasing September 22nd, 2020. I'm Jeremy Watson. I'm a group product manager here at GitLab. I am here with Harris, Matt, and Melissa, and we're really excited to talk about what's in store for the four groups here on the Managed stage. We're also going to do our best to highlight along the way some telemetry and instrumentation improvements that we're prioritizing. We're really excited to make data kind of more of a point of emphasis here at GitLab, and we're trying to prioritize some of these improvements as well. I'll kick it over to Melissa, who's going to talk a little bit about access. Melissa.
Thank you. So Melissa Ushakov, I work on the access team. And one thing that one change that we've made on the access team in the past release, and we're going to continue on forward, is that we now have 2 engineers dedicated to working on security issues. So as you can imagine, the access team security is one of our biggest focuses. And in order to make sure that we're giving proper priority and working through backlog of security issues, and is basically part of what we do day to day, we're now dedicated 2 engineers full-time to working on that. On the feature side of things, we have launched Project Access Token in 13.3 for self-managed. And we're working on a couple of issues that will allow us to launch that for GitLab.com. So you can see here on my screen what it looks like. Basically, you can go into a project and create a token and scope it. And it's not tied to any particular user. And it's also doesn't count against your licensee. So what this allows you to do is, separate a token from a user. You don't have to worry about if that user leaves your organization or your group or anything like that, and you can manage them separately from users. Another issue that we're working through for GitLab.com is this aspect of a no access role. So in 13.3, we launched the ability to send the set the role for SSO, the default role. Previously, anytime you were created via SCIM or you used SSO to access a group, you're by default added as a guest. So now you're able to customize that to any of the 4 existing roles that we have. With this change, you can actually set yourself to what we're calling no role, right? Which basically means you're part of the top level group. You can SSO in, but you can't access any of its subgroups. So basically, you have to then be added specifically to subgroups, and that's how you would gain access. So this is an important change for companies that want to have groups that are hidden if they contain sensitive information, or basically you have to receive some training to access it, or there's a lot of reasons why you would want a specific group to be hidden. But today, you're not able to do that if you're using SSO. The other change that I'm calling a stretch goal is completing the MVC for support for 2FA and the CLI. We've been working on this for a couple milestones, and we expect to have the first iteration of this complete this milestone. So it's a very exciting change. Basically, it's like what you can see here, that you'll be prompted for your code on the command line to authenticate. And like Jeremy mentioned, we're also working on instrumentation. So metrics around unique users that are using enhanced authentication and paid authentication methods. And that's the focus for access.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Melissa. I still think that the no role was such like a creative way of working around the inheritance problem. I guess for context, the challenge we were trying to solve was figure out a way we could make inheritance kind of optional, so you didn't have forced inheritance of members on child subgroups. Every single place where were using subgroups in your product, and we couldn't find a way around the very hard engineering work of making inheritance optional. So instead, we introduced this no role, which allows you to inherit this. It allows us to continue respecting inheritance, but you're inheriting essentially a base level of access, which doesn't let you see anything, and then you can incrementally increase the level of access, like depending on where you want the user to have access, which is super creative. Are we thinking about extending that idea beyond SSO, or do we just see that as like an SSO concept for now?
I think this is, I'll describe it as like a workaround to our current, kind of like how GitLab.com works specifically, right? I think long-term where I'd like us to go is to have sort of like a more proper user management area for GitLab.com, right? And that's where, when you first are onboarded, right, that's where you go, similar to how we have self-managed, right, where you kind of join an instance and you're in this user's holding place, right, until you get assigned out. I think long-term, that's where I'd like us to go, rather than extend on this no access concept.
Cool. That sounds good. I'm excited to see that direction where we take it. Awesome. I'll go ahead and go next. So I'm representing the analytics group this particular release, and the objectives for this release are we really wanted to focus on like our core direction and vision for the analytics group, which is all about kind of making teams and knowledge workers more efficient in GitLab. We ideally want to be able to give you really powerful insights that help you work more efficiently and more productively than you can in any other tool chain. And we wanted to focus on two themes this release, one of which was what I'm calling instance level DevOps reporting, which is large organizations that are using GitLab. They want to be able to understand and make sure that they're getting the most that they can out of the product. And then number two is really dogfooding and helping engineering teams be more productive by using the pain that our internal customers here at GitLab kind of feel when they're using the product. So we're on theme with those themes. We're prioritizing a few things, and the first one I'll talk about is this instance statistics MVP. And the problem that we want to try to solve here is like, as a large enterprise, we have a lot of infrastructure and a lot of resources and people devoted to using GitLab, and we want to make sure that we have like a solid return on investment on our investment in GitLab, and that we're continuing to see people use the product and use it productively. So the first kind of MVP that we're going to ship against this is by introducing this new instance statistics kind of feed page that's in the admin panel for starters. And it's going to look very simple with a users, projects, groups, issues, merge requests, and pipelines container that simply tells you all of those respective objects that are on the instance. We're currently planning to add the containers in the first iteration, and then also add as a stretch goal, the chart as a visualization as a way to understand kind of how your product, the instance is being used over time. This we're planning on offering in GitLab Core as a free feature. And we're also planning on more kind of advanced reporting at the enterprise level that I'll kind of talk a little bit later. But as far as the first iteration goes, we're hoping to plan at least to deliver the containers at the top, and then as a stretch goal, the chart at the bottom. But the whole feature is an effort to kind of help people understand at the organizational level, how are people using my product? Are people still using it? Are people engaged? And is this kind of something that's adding value to our company? And hopefully this will be a nice first step. The next thing we're working on is kind of related to our dogfooding theme of helping make engineering teams really more productive by using GitLab Inc. as a model for how we can do that. And in 13.3, we're introducing this merge request report feature, which is going to show you kind of like your throughput of the number of merge requests that your team has merged at the project level over time. But it's a simple chart and a simple data table. And in 13.4, we're going to continue to iterate on this by adding a filter control at the top, so you can filter by a variety of labels within your project. So a team at GitLab can understand for their specific group how productive they are and how many merge requests they're merging kind of over time. And we're also going to add a number of additional columns to the data table that we will have in this feature. So you can see in merge request analytics, we're going to list the specific merge requests underneath the chart that correspond to the merge requests. In our first version of this in 13.3, we're only going to show the date merged, time to merged, milestone, and number of line changes per merge request. But in 13.4, we're going to introduce comments, commits, approvals, and pipelines. So we will have like a fully fledged and built out data table, kind of like what you see here. So this will help engineering teams really understand for their specific group and for a specific label, how productive is the team, which particular merge requests took an extremely long time to merge, what made them unique, and kind of how you can improve over time. The other thing that we're doing is we are introducing in 13.3 this concept of multiple value streams. So we have customizable value streams in the product where you can actually define like custom stages that where you're able to go into value stream analytics, and we can scroll down here to these custom stages where I'm able to edit a stage and then signal like a start event, like a label being applied and a label being pulled off. But the problem is that right now there's only one value stream that you can create, and you have to every kind of new department that comes along has to reorder this that's specific for the stages that are specific for them. In 13.3, we're introducing this idea of multiple value streams where you can create specific custom stage setups that you can use for specific departments, where like QA can create like a set of value of stages that matters for them. But you can't delete those stages. So in 13.4, we're introducing the ability for you to delete these stages and modify them, so you're able to use this feature a little more effectively. So those are the things that we are committing to, and some of the stretch goals that we have and we're still refining are some improvements to issues analytics, where we have currently just a bar chart in this feature that just shows the open issues over time, but we actually want to add a total issues line and a bar for closed issues as well. So you're able to kind of visualize, are we actually making progress against like the burn down of open issues? How many issues are we kind of closing per release per month, to kind of be able to visualize your issue activity. And then finally, we're kind of planning on this Enterprise DevOps Report MVC as an early start on some of like a deeper kind of enterprise grade product that kind of shows you some of the instance level reports. And we're going to start by just showing like merge request activity, like days to merge, merge request per author in the first iteration, and then in 13.5 in our next release, we're going to try to go a little bit deeper and show a lot more interesting kind of specific metrics, and also allow you to create custom segments across your instance. You can create like a series of projects and groups that encompass like a particular business unit and see like productivity and KPIs for that specific unit. So that's coming in 13.5, but for right now, we hope to get a start on that, and really excited about the direction. So that's all I've got. Melissa,
I'll jump on. It's not really a question, more of a comment. That the filters that you showed for merge request analytics are really cool, especially by label, right? Since we use labels so heavily in GitLab, and having that for issues would be super helpful.
Oh, you're so right. You're so right that we actually already have it. So if you click on so I'm looking at GitLab org issue analytics, and then we do have that filter bar. So click on group access, and you can see here. So currently, it's sorted just by you can't sort columns, but it's sorted by default by age. But you can see here milestone, issue weight, due date, and so forth. So you can, if you're interested in like security issues or bugs or whatever, you can go ahead and take a look at that there. So we've got it. Give it a try. Awesome. Matt, over to you, sir.
Cool. Thanks, Jeremy. Let me go ahead and screen share here. So for the compliance group in 13.4, there's a couple of caveats. So one, we're going to be continuing with some of our audit events refactor work. But the good news there, at risk of sounding like a broken record, is we've actually made significant progress over the last few milestones in terms of improving performance and how the data is structured and stored, so that we're now able to start coming back to adding more audit events and features, like one of the ones I'll cover here for exporting audit events as a CSV. And then the other thing is we're experimenting as a group with dedicating half of our capacity to simply refining issues, because we have a decent backlog right now, but there, in terms of issues that are ready to go, refined, and just need to be scheduled or prioritized and scheduled. But what we'd like to get to is an ideal state where we have dozens of issues that are just simply ready to go, and we can pull from those so that as we're working on features in each milestone, there's less pressure for the team to have to focus also equal amounts of work on refinement, because that just can lead to burnout and get stressful kind of quickly. So we think that in the long run, this focus on refinement over the next milestone or two, having that heavier emphasis will allow us to get to that ideal state so we can become even faster and more productive in future milestones. But as far as the feature work for 13.4, we're focused on bringing export audit events. This was originally put on pause while we were refactoring audit events because there were a lot of performance considerations. I think it was something like several seconds to pull even 10 or 20 records. And so now we've essentially greatly reduced that limitation, and we're able to now implement this feature. There are still some trade-offs we have to make as we continue refactoring audit events. Like, we'll pull a maximum of the most recent 100,000 events for the current view. So if you sort and filter through the audit events table and there's 100,001, you're not going to get that one last event for now. We'll be continuing to improve that experience overall so we can hopefully do away with those types of limitations. The other thing we're going to be doing is continuing to iterate on the credentials inventory. So there's a big epic of iterations that we'd like to make so that credential management within GitLab is better. Not just better in terms of what our organizational customers can do in terms of setting expiration dates for personal access tokens and SSH keys, but also adding more credentials that we track as part of that inventory, adding flexibility in terms of whether or not you want that to be programmatically enforced. And one of those is manifesting here as a button to revoke a personal access token. So we have several enterprise customers who have said, we want to be able to set an expiration date, but we don't want to be disruptive and have that automatically get revoked when it expires. But we still want to be able to expire it if we've talked to that employee and they're not rotating their credential, or if we suspect that it's maybe been breached or compromised and we need to revoke that anyway. So that's just another improvement we're making there. So that'll be available for self-managed administrators. And we'll be considering how we bring this to GitLab.com, because there are certainly some challenges in terms of the overlap between sort of your professional life and your personal life as it pertains to your account on GitLab. And the last major piece of feature work is going to be group push rules API. So push rules existed at the instance and project level. We shipped it for the group level, but now we have several enterprise customers who automate a lot of their work via API, and this is one of the many ways in which they do that. So this is something we'll be working on for 13.4 to bring that functionality to an API so that enterprises can continue that automation work. Those are, I think, the big three things that we're focused on. There are several other issues tied into the audit events refactor and instrumenting some product usage type metrics, but I don't think we necessarily need to cover those since this won't be customer facing.
Awesome. Hooray for being able to export audit events finally. I know that was a
I know.
Well, I know that was a challenging, I don't know. We had a number of challenges around like the refactor and trying to understand the engineering work. So great job finally prioritizing that. I'm super excited to see that. I'm curious, what kind of feedback have we received on the credential inventory?
Yeah, I think, so thanks for asking, because I actually circled back to it since we tend to, in full transparency, right? We tend to like create these cool new features and then we don't really give them the TLC that they need. And so the feedback that was the catalyst here is that we were told that, hey, this is great, but like, it doesn't capture this credential or that credential, things like admin impersonation tokens, GPG keys, deploy tokens. And then on top of that, we were getting feedback about, well, hey, like I need flexibility in how I want to manage the policies around this, which is why we're building in some of that, optional enforcement of the expiration or revocation, and why we've added functionality to the API to allow for listing PAT tokens and revoking them that way as well. So that's, yeah, I think that's the key feedback there.
That's awesome. I'm glad to hear that people are wanting to see more out of it. I think if we had the opposite problem where no one cared, that would be a bad sign, obviously. But it's great to see that people want us to do more of it. I'm not surprised to hear that people want to see more credentials exposed in there. And I'm guessing at some point they'll ask us to have like filtering, and because there'll be so many credentials at some point they won't be able to actually find anything. So, but yeah, that's great to hear that people are excited about it and it solves a problem for them. So great job.
Yeah, and as Melissa tackles some of the challenges around like project level access tokens and things like that, some of those more nuanced scoped credentials, those will need to be included. And as kind of a side note to your first comment about export audit events, one of the things that became obvious when we were scheduling that was we plugged it into the issue analytics view, and it's sorted by the age, and I think that one was like 1,400 days. So that should bring our average down by some small amount.
Nice, love it. I always get embarrassed when I like look at the average age. Maybe that wasn't the best column to be sorting on in the first iteration.
But like, I think that's exactly the problem that feature solves, right? Is it highlights that, hey, like we know that there's constraints here and we're really working on making this happen. But when you see the raw data to know that like, okay, I have 5 or 6 P1s here, but I'm going to tackle that 1,400-day-old one before I move on to the like 30-day-old one, because that just needs to get solved. So it was really helpful to see that. And I know we've talked offline about our internal dog fooding feedback about what we'd like to see there. So I'm excited for that part.
Yeah, thanks for dog fooding that. I'm not questioning the usefulness of sorting my age. I'm mainly just talking about my wounded ego as a product manager. So
just edit the browser to change that value to like 2 days.
There you go. All right. Thanks a lot, Matt. Appreciate you. Harris, over to you, sir.
Cool. Hey, everybody. I am going to talk about what import is planning in 13.4. And we've had a great and exciting planning session where we were able to focus on advancing in parallel 3 of our top directional items, the GitLab migration, the GitHub scaling improvements, and automating translations. So the first one I want to talk about is unblocking the GitLab migration MVC. So you want to ask what GitLab migration is. So this is our solution to migrating any group and or project or group with subgroups and subprojects underneath from one instance of GitLab to another. We currently do that by exporting group files, exporting project files, and then somehow reassembling all those by importing them back into the target. So we want to make this a self-serve feature that our users will be able to use. So to do that, to unblock this MVC, we are actually running 2 spikes in 13.4 to research the technical feasibility of the 2 potential approaches we can take before we start running down one of these. One is the API-based approach, in which we would have a solution that's similar to how the GitHub and the Bitbucket importers work today, where you go to your destination instance and enter your credentials for the source, and we will just pool your projects, your groups, all of your data across into the new instance. The other approach is kind of more similar to what we currently have, and that is a file-based approach where we would create an export file and import file, but we would automate a lot of this so that the users wouldn't have to actually download the export and then store it somewhere and then upload it back into the destinations. And so these 2 approaches are the 2 choices that we do have for the migration. And at the end of these 2 spikes, we will know exactly which way we're going to start running this way. The spikes are time boxed to 5 days each, because we're just trying to learn as much as we can in those 5 days and then come back, huddle together, and decide how we're going to shape the technical side of that MVC. The next on our list is GitHub importer, and specifically the scaling of GitHub imports. The ability for the GitHub importer to handle either large projects, large amount of data, or a large number of projects that are being imported. The problem we're going to solve in 13.4 is the fact that when we pull your list of projects available in GitHub, we pull all the projects and then try to display them in the view. So if you have something like 1,000 projects, there's a good chance that this view will time out. Or in best case, it will be really large and hard to sift through. We do have filtering here, but we don't have the ability for you to just browse through all the projects that you have if you have a large number. So what we're doing is we're adding our trusty standard pagination at the bottom of this search so that we can show X amount, like 20 projects per page, and make it so that we only pull those that number across into the UI and don't wait for all of the projects to be loaded. If you have thousands, especially, this times out regularly, and you only get a subset of the projects that you see. Finally, the last direction item that we're going to try to move forward is automating crowd-in translations. Right now, when we have new translations in our translation tool called crowd-in, in order to get those into GitLab, there is a multi-step manual process to get those translations in that involves a couple of days for a developer to get that in. And we do that monthly now, but we would like to automate that so that we don't have to spend time on it, and we could do it more often than monthly. In order to do that, we're going to have to learn how to run this, how to automate this and how to embed this into our build process. And this spike will give us an answer to that, so that after this, we'll be able to finally play that issue that finalizes the automation process. In addition to these three kind of larger directional issues, we are also instrumenting our import Gmail performance indicator. In order to do that, we're going to have to add usage ping to multiple events. So all of our importers have their own entry points, and we're going to have to sum all of those up in order to get a total number of unique users that use importers. This feature is large enough for us to actually split it into multiple issues so that we can iterate better and faster on this. So we are planning to pull all three of these issues related to this into 13.4. There is one other issue that we're going to have to discuss separately regarding the CSV issues importer, but that number is very low compared to the overall number of imports that we have. So this shouldn't impact our Gmail calculation by a significant number at the end of 13.4. So at the end of 13.4, we expect to be able to have this number understand the number of users using import.
Awesome. Thanks. And thanks for breaking this down into an epic and all the great detail here. And I also appreciate you time boxing the spikes. You mentioned that the migration spikes were time boxing to 5 days. If we can go ahead and just immediately get started on that work right afterwards, what do you think about continuing that work in 13.4?
I'd be all for it. It may or may not work out from the time perspective. So depending on how fast we're able to refine the item, we may or may not be able to pull into 13.4, but this should definitely be a continuation for the team going from this technical research into refinement and into implementation. Even if we start the work in 13.4, I wouldn't expect that MVC to be delivered in 13.4, but the work could definitely get started.
Sure, awesome, makes sense. Do you know how kind of time consuming the current crowd-in translation process is right now? I know it's kind of painful, it's time consuming. Do you recall kind of like how time consuming it is at the moment?
Yeah, so in order to understand this. I have done this 2 or 3 times. So these monthly imports, I've worked on the issue and the merge request with some help from the team, because there are a couple of steps that I really need somebody to help me with, like squashing the like 50 or 60 different commits into one, and then making some changes there. But it definitely would take a good day, like, contiguous out of your time, but it took me several days each time, because I would spend several hours each day. So it does take, maybe a good day out of somebody's month. And also, we're still not able to deliver the frequency that we would want to deliver, which is more than just the monthly updates. So we're trying to get to a more continuous updating of the translations.
Yeah, cool. Awesome.
So it's one day for all translations that come in, basically?
Yeah. So they all come per language. So if you have 60 languages being translated, you will get 60 files in the merge request. And what takes up a lot of time is reconciling any errors. So the linters will catch a lot of things, and then somebody has to manually reconcile that either in CrowdIn or in the merge request, and then make those changes and try kind of running the pipeline again and see if we can pass all that. And in the end, also again, just a couple of steps that need to be done manually with that number of merge requests. You get warnings about how much you're changing that you kind of have to overcome. So several steps that could be just automated away, and we can change our pipeline and build process to overcome it.
Definitely worth doing. Cool. All right, y'all. Thanks a lot for a great kickoff. Excited about what's ahead. Cheers.